Good day everybody, this is Lisi from Lisi's Bakery, and today I want to show you how I did this amazing and beautiful blue cake. I started out by coloring my fondant a certain type of blue. I knew I wouldn't find this blue in the shop, so I decided to just buy white fondant and color it myself. I used just a little bit of blue and colored it this color, and then added the tiniest smidgen of black, so I had a little bit of a dirty blue color. I then rolled out my fondant and started covering the cakes. Please be advised that these are dummy cakes and they're not real. I've had a few people complain, or not complain, but comment that you can see my animals and my pets in these videos, and I understand your concern if this was a real cake, but it's not. It's a dummy and nobody ate this cake, I promise you. So I rolled out this fondant and rolled it out nice and thin and applied it to my cake. I started out by doing the tops of the cakes, as you can see in this video, and then I rolled out a long thin piece which I wrapped around the cakes. As you can see, I wrapped something on the dummy cake just to make the fondant stick. So I used coconut oil in this case because I find that rubbing that on, especially in the winter, makes the fondant stick to the cake very well. You can also wet the dummy with some water just to make it sticky. So I would wrap my fondant around the cake and then use my fingers to just tear it off roughly. I wanted it to look like it was wrapped around in a really rough manner. As you can see, there's my cat Mika saying hi for the first time, and she'll probably show up again in this video. I'm just using some water in a little jar with a brush to apply the fondant all around the cake. And then I used some lace, which was ready-made lace, to make an indentation into the fondant that was really beautiful. So I wanted those flowers to just stand out. I then continued to do the same thing for the second cake. Just roll out really thin, put some coconut oil on, wrap it around your dummy. I was lucky in this video because it was a dummy, because I could put it flat on its side. With a normal cake you wouldn't be able to do that. As you can see here, I continued by wrapping around until I wrapped around the entire cake. So with a normal cake, obviously you wouldn't have to wet it, or you wouldn't have to put coconut oil, because you'd have buttercream or ganache that will make your fondant stick to that. So you wouldn't have to wet it. But you can use some water on the overlapping parts just to make sure that the fondant sticks to the fondant. And then just use your fingers and roughly tear off bits. Really make it look rustic and just make it look amazing. As you can see, I added some more patches. I wasn't happy with it the way it looked, so I just added some more fondant onto it. Used my edible lace again to make more indentations. I really love this pattern, it's so beautiful. So then I used the gazillion little flower molds and some fondant. I used my leftover fondant so that the blue is exactly the same as the cake. I just pushed the fondant into the mold, let it sit in the fridge for a few minutes, and then pop them out of the mold. It's a really easy way to make beautiful flowers. I then continued on to making some wafer paper flowers that would go on top of my cakes. Start by folding your paper in half and then fold it in half again and again to make 8 pieces. You can then cut the petals out. I chose to not cut a round petal but to have a heart-shaped one because I wanted it to look more like a little peony or something than a rose. I used a 50-50 mix of alcohol and water to wet my flower petals. I did this because alcohol helps to keep the flowers a little bit more stiff, whereas the water helps the flowers to curl. I find that a 50-50 mix or 50-50 ratio is perfect for making these petals. Simply hold the petal in your hand and use a brush to wet the entire petal. Don't wet it too much, as you don't want it to completely crumble up and fall into a gazillion pieces. You just want it to be slightly wet so that it forms in your hand. This then causes the petal to form according to the shape that you're holding your hand in. As you can see, I made many of these petals and then assembled them together. I did this until I had an entire flower, which looked absolutely amazing in my opinion, and then I placed it on my cake. I continued to make a lot more petals and a lot more flowers until I was happy. Some of the flowers I even colored with a little bit of metallic dust to make them a little bit of a rose gold, goldish color. I think they turned out beautiful. So the next morning started with taking all the flowers I made with molds and sticking them onto the side of the cake. I used some royal icing that I had left over from a previous order to stick these flowers to the cake. Just place them all over the place. Be random and have fun. This is not something that's very specific. It's just about placing these flowers where you think they look right and where you think they'll be beautiful. I then also used some draggies or sugar pearls and placed them in between the flowers and all over the cake. I then continued to paint the edges of my fondant. I wanted it to stand out and I wanted it to be very visible that this was like a texture, so I decided to paint it with metallic gold. I mixed metallic gold dust with some confectioner's glaze, which forms an edible paint. I then used a paintbrush to paint the edges of my fondant. I also wanted to highlight those beautiful indentations that I made, so I used some of the metallic dust just as it was and dusted all over the cake. I also dusted some of my flowers. Well, that's it. That's how I made this beautiful and gorgeous blue cake. I hope that you truly enjoyed watching this tutorial and that you learned something valuable from this. I hope to see you again soon. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and I'll see you again soon. Have a lovely day. Thank you very much for watching.